So how long do timber frame structures and homes last? That's a question I hear a lot of. The short answer is they last much longer than traditionally built homes. Traditionally built homes are by code engineered to be 50 years. That isn't a long time. With today's fast construction and things like this, homes get torn down because of roads and this and that and the other thing. So there's a shorter mindset today than there was back in the old days when timber framing was the predominant building method. So as far as how long they last, the Notre Dame church, it just burned down. It was built in 1400s and was going strong until the fire came through, right? So fire is one thing that will shorten the life of a home. With timber frame homes in particular, they are not fireproof in that they won't burn at all, but they're fireproof in that they'll be safe. Even in a fire, you won't have a collapsing roof fall on the occupants. And the reason that is today's codes say that if you have post and beam construction that is bigger than 4 inches, you don't need sprinklers because the fire can only char so deep in a big beam, whereas in a 2x4, you take that same depth of charring and you reduce the strength easily by 50% in a hot fire, and wham, things fall down and it's unsafe. So in that way, timber framing is advantageous for fire, and if the fire isn't too severe, a lot of times they can be scraped down and cleaned up and be part of the story. Now, another thing that will shorten the life of a home is earthquake and wind. Timber framing has an advantage there in that the big timbers generally create some rigidity somewhere and then they have some flex. There's long posts and they have some flex in there. In Italy in particular, in old timber frames, they've done some studies, and basically the synopsis, the takeaway is that if you use timber framing with brick or rock infill, the rock is loose, and so it acts as a mass that can shift around and relock into place, and the timbers provide like banding around it, so it becomes really flexible but yet really structurally sound. And that could be another reason why you see so many timber frames today still hanging around, even though being built hundreds and hundreds of years ago. The big thing is going to destroy buildings more than fire, more than earthquakes, is rot and decay. And timbers have a big advantage there again because of their size. If the maintenance gets let go for say 5-10 years, you have a better chance of capturing that window and repairing it. You have a lot more wood to battle that decay before it's now really unsound and really unsafe and not worth doing anything with. So that's a really big thing right there. With your timber frame, and with rod in particular, the things to do are to make sure you have big enough overhangs. That's an easy one. Just the bigger overhangs is going to solve a lot of water problems. You'll see it in old barns and old buildings. They'll bring stone up part way, and that was again for the rot. The other thing that with today, back then they didn't use a lot of flashing, but there's ways to flash wrong that introduce water into the building, and it happens more often than you think. But get your flashing in the water, keep the water out, your vapor barriers, and your timber frame will last a long, long time. The other thing that when you're talking about a timber frame lasting for a long time, that alludes to passing your timber frame on down to your heirs, your children, and also how long can you enjoy this. And that's really a big part of the timber frame experience, is just a warm, cozy, solid feel. And so it kind of amplifies the love and the connection and the togetherness of a family, a group of friends. It just makes a cool place to hang out. Now, it's not going to make you the life of the party or the charming person just by virtue of being around timbers alone, but it certainly creates a nice atmosphere to amplify whatever's good about you and how you relate to people. Now let's talk about Germany and a trip I recently made there. So alluding to the timber frame experience that we've just talked about, this is a little bit of a similar situation. My wife came home from the library one day and her eyes were glistening. And she had a book. And the title of the book was Die With Nothing. So catchy title. So like, yeehaw, let's have a party, right? Well, it was kind of the message of the book, not totally. The author was an investment guy, stocks, bonds, all the stock market. And he started when he was in his early 20s. And so he was responsible, on track, allocating money and doing his thing. He had life figured out, or so he thought. His buddy was taking a different path. His buddy went to a loan shark, got a high interest loan, went and blew the money on a Europe trip for half a year. And his friend was like, what are you doing? This is so asinine. Well, his buddy came back and successfully paid off the loan. And over the next 10 years, the author got bits and pieces of his friend's experience. And when he was in his early 30s, he had stacked up quite a bit of money. And he says, hey, I think I want to do that. And so he packs up, goes over, and he tries to recreate the experience his buddy had. One problem. The window was past. He's in his early 30s. He doesn't think like a young 20-year-old anymore. He can't hang out to the wee hours of the night. He can't just chill with anyone. He's already got his interests and his things. He doesn't want to spend a night in a youth hostel, sharing bathrooms and doing this. And so that moment of freeness and that period of time was gone. He couldn't do it. So the message this author had in the book is that experiences pay dividends just like stocks and bonds. And so that was what brought our trip about. One thing I noticed in Germany when I went to the castle where Luther translated the New Testament was the timbers were almost like petrified stone. And the construction left a place where water could kind of sit between the mud and the wattle and the timbers. And I don't know if it's the climate or the oak that was back then. If somebody can shine a light on this and inform me, that'd be cool. Here in the Northwest, they definitely wouldn't be lasting 500 years old, unless I'm missing something. But anyway, that was a great trip. Those experiences are paying dividends, and I encourage you when you're moving forward now, your timber experience will pay dividends as well. It's a great hobby, great pursuit. Great place to chill, relax, and reflect on life. Okay? Now making it last a long time so you can pass on to your heirs. Big overhangs, get the flashing right, keep the water off. You could have stone protection on the lower part where the water gets. Those are some easy things to do. And then of course you'll have the protection of fire. Placed if there would be a fire, it's not going to collapse on you. And then with timber frame, because there's a post with the rigid part, there's flexibility, and so they're naturally inclined to flex with an earthquake. So there it is. How long do timber frames last? You have the Notre Dame Castle or the church. You have Luther's Castle, both 500 years old. There's churches and old buildings that are thousands of years old. So they last a long time. Just how long they last is going to depend some degree on the climate, depending on how you construct it, how it's designed, and then factors like fire and earthquake, which are a little bit out of our control, but generally those don't happen too often. And the experience, I want you to think about your experience. How long can that last? Okay? And now may be the time to pull the trigger sooner rather than later. You and your journey, your decision. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments or questions, or you can shine a light on that petrified oak, do so. And like it, smash it, subscribe, all the above. See you on the next one.